Understanding. It's oftentimes the simplest yet most sought after thing when attempting to connect with another person. We want to be with somebody who understands us. We want to understand the people who we want to be with. And at times, that can be an exhausting experience, to say the least. People have interests and beliefs that may not completely align with our own, and in that small imperfection comes an anomaly that can leave your relationship in a state of limbo, where one person is desperately trying to reach the other, but nothing ever changes because it's impossible for you two to ever truly understand each other. This strain can fester, twisting into a special kind of resentment, not necessarily for any one person in particular, but instead this invisible separation, almost taunting you with its omnipresence, the desire to understand, the failure to understand, making you question just how much you love the person you claim to want to understand in the first place, until it boils over and everything comes flooding out. When Supernatural Battles Became Commonplace is a very long name for an anime. It can also be called Ino-Bato, which is much shorter, but I fear the way I pronounce it makes me sound like one of those weird otakus. Regardless of which name you're more comfortable with, the story remains the same. Releasing as a light novel series from June 15th, 2012 to January 13th, 2018, Ino-Bato follows Judai Ando, your run-of-the-mill high schooler who, along with his friend group, finds himself gaining access to superpowers. Now, along with the Senko High Literature Club, Ando attempts to merge his Chunin delusions and his newfound powers with his normal life, as he and his friends attempt to make the most of their new abilities. What the fuck is a Chunin? It's a very simple concept for a very simple story, but where the true strength of Ino-Bato lies is in its characters, and in particular, their connections with one another. The plotline of the Ino-Bato anime is very combat deficient. Jodai's own ability is beyond weak and wouldn't even be a mild inconvenience for the average person, and as such, the majority of the series is a comedy, exploring how Ando uses his delusions to cope with the weakness of his own powers, and how the shared circumstances of the literature club pushes them closer together, how they come to understand one another. And among these literature club members, two girls remain prominent, the self-conscious Tomio Kanzaki and the airheaded Hatoko Kushikawa. We'll be getting to Tomio in just a second, but she isn't the true subject of this video. Hatoko, on the other hand, is, and this is primarily due to a specific scene that she shares with Ando in episode 7, a scene that lends itself all too well to the thesis of this video: the failure to understand. To love a person, to understand them, is a privilege that comes with time. You grow with the person. Perhaps at first, their oddities separate them from the rest, making them stand out in your eyes, drawing your attention to them, and in turn, lighting that fire, sparking that desire to connect. However, life goes on. People change, opinions shift. What once entranced you about a person becomes an unbridgeable gap, an annoyance, and suddenly, there's a disconnect. Jodai's connection with Tomio is a pain point for Hatoko in episode 7. The anime dedicates almost the entire first segment of episode 7 to highlighting just how different these two connections manage to be. I wouldn't expect you to understand. You probably wouldn't get it anyway. I think listening would bore you. Every line spoken by Ando is a strike on the iron. It's disrespectful, an assumption of ignorance, and an active dismissal of Hatoko simply because of her inability to connect with Ando the way Tomio can. Tomio, a girl who shares Jodai's interest in the dark and dramatic, even if she manages to be better about hiding it. Ando connects with her over their shared interest and pays especially close attention to her compared to the rest of the group. He can tell when something is bothering her, and his suggestion of a union skill at one point in the episode, while being a very lighthearted scene, is a further confirmation of their connection. Ando believes that there will come a time when they are in perfect sync, where they completely understand one another, and he wants to prepare for it ahead of time. Something he would never do with Hatoko herself, something that causes her to lash out in a way that Ando's never seen before. The rant itself is one of the most well-written parts of Ino-Bato and is a big contributing factor to the show's popularity simply due to the astounding performance of Saori Hayami. The growing anger of Hatoko, contrasted with the confused reaction of Ando, perfectly encapsulates the suddenness of everything. Every complaint that Hatoko throws at Ando can be seen in their interactions throughout the episode, and Hatoko's building annoyance can be seen in her reactions to the various dismissals from Jodai himself. She flips between criticizing recognizing Ando's interests while also begging for him to explain them to her, while also criticizing him for not fully understanding what he's talking about himself. There's so many angles that she chooses to attack from, and yet they're all woven together interchangeably, because this is the first time in the series, and possibly in their friendship, that Hatoko is truly, honestly speaking her mind. Speak so I can understand you is Hatoko begging for Ando to do the same, to at the very least give her the chance to connect with the true him, to say what he means and to stop assuming that she can't understand, not because she can, but because she desperately wants to. Ando's chuny behavior is little more than a mask for his own insecurities, a tool he uses to give himself confidence around other people, and even though Hatoko can't see why he likes what he likes, she likes him, and therefore engages with his delusions, evidently to her own detriment. It's painful for her not to understand, and this scene is the culmination of that pain. The pain of failing to understand. Ando's delusions, contrasted with the very real superpowers of the narrative, are the center of Ino-Bato, an interesting coincidence that makes the main character stand out and creates a multitude of opportunities for interactions with all of the other characters. But this is the first time in the narrative that it's portrayed as a genuine shortcoming of Ando as a person, a buffer that makes it harder for him to connect with those around him, or more accurately, a wall that makes it harder for others to connect with him. The narrative of Ino-Bato displays this wall, and it forces Ando to face reality at multiple junctions, but this one, above all, is the most interesting because separate from the superpowers, separate from the animeisms, this is a weakness Ando's always had, and Hatoko, more than anyone else, enabled him, out of her desire to understand, something that slowly creeps back into the limelight, and in the context of this scene, potentially ruins their friendship. The writing put on display here is amazing, because of how it pushes a typically neutral character in Hatoko to take a more active position in the narrative. Her struggle to engage with the interests of Ando and his dismissiveness of her in spite of this forces her to question her position in Ando's life, or, in a meta sense, her position in the narrative. This is a human problem that many people are likely going through as we speak, forcing themselves to understand someone, forcing themselves to engage with a person's interests even if it's something they could never understand, just to be met with dismissal as if they never cared in the first place. Such dismissal could only ever serve as a painful reminder of how hard it can be to understand the one you love, how hard it can be to make that connection in the face of such a vast separation, and this scene expresses that perfectly. The anger of Hatoko is relatable to the audience, because everyone can relate to the pain of failing to understand. My name is John Sage, and thanks for watching.